Hello and welcome to Being Aro Ace, Part 1. In the first video in this series, we're going to talk about words, concepts, and definitions that people in the aromantic and asexual communities, including myself, use to talk about or express our experiences. And we're going to need these moving forward for the other videos in the series, so that's why we're going to start right here. Well, first of all, we need to talk about what does aromantic and asexual mean. So the most general or basic definition of these words is that being aromantic or aromanticism means that you're not romantically attracted to anyone. And asexual or asexuality means that you're not sexually attracted to anyone. And all right, how do you know if you're not attracted? Like, what is attraction then? Well, that's what we need to talk about next then. But before that, I need to say that this, as I said, is the most general or basic definition. And aromanticism and asexuality, if you dive deeper into it, it has more nuances and is more of a spectrum, or they are umbrellas in their own rights. And I'm not going to go into that here, but I'm going to make separate videos diving really into more of the nuances and details of the spectrums of aromanticism and asexuality. All right, so what is attraction? Well, I'm sure there's a lot of research and it's hard to pin down, but from what I know, attraction is an involuntary reaction when you see or interact with someone. Now, maybe it's ironic that I'm aromantic and asexual, so I don't really experience attraction, at least not romantically or sexually. I'm trying to define it, but from all I can find, it's involuntary. People don't usually wake up in the morning and think, you know what would be fun today? I feel like being attracted to Robert today. But then a week later you wake up and think, I'm kind of tired of being attracted to Robert. I'll stop now. From my understanding, that's not how it works. You might see Robert or you might interact with Robert and then realize that, oh my God, I'm attracted to Robert. But you don't control if you're attracted to Robert or not. You can do things to try to, for example, get over an attraction, but you don't really decide that you want to be attracted or not. It's involuntary. It's something that your body does for you. You don't really have control over it. But so when you don't necessarily experience attraction, or say that you don't, why do we make a distinction between romantic and sexual attraction? For most people, I think, in the world, there is not really a distinction, or it's mixed. It's the same thing. It often goes hand in hand. But if you are, for example, asexual, so you don't experience necessarily sexual attraction, then it suddenly becomes irrelevant to talk about that separate from romantic attraction, or even other types of attraction like platonic or aesthetic. Attractions which for most people are mixed, but if one of them, you don't experience one of them, then it's very relevant to make distinctions. Therefore, a lot of ace and aro people, myself included, we use the split attraction model, where we distinguish between types of attraction. Now, I think the split attraction model is relevant, or can be relevant, for anyone. Doesn't matter your orientation. But I totally understand that for a lot of people, it is completely irrelevant and might actually just confuse things. And if that's how it is for you, you do not have to use the split attraction model. If it doesn't apply to you, that's totally fine. It doesn't work for everyone. But we are going to talk about it here. All right, so types of attraction. The big four that we mostly talk about are sexual attraction, romantic attraction, platonic attraction, and aesthetic attraction. So let's start with sexual attraction. So sexual attraction would be when you look at or think about someone and you feel like, yeah, if the circumstances were right, I would totally want to have sex with this person. I feel drawn to that person specifically, to be interested in having sex with them, or sexual intimacy with them. And attraction is usually towards it has a specific target, a specific person. Now, this is not necessarily the same thing as sex drive or libido. Sex drive or libido is usually categorized as your want for sex. In a sense, it's usually described as like a hunger, basically, that your body wants sexual release or sexual intimacy, but it's not directed towards a specific person. It's like you're hungry, but you don't necessarily have to be thinking of a specific food, but you're just hungry in general. And that's what sex drive or libido is, that it's not directed to a specific person, but you would want to have this, or your body would like this. And then we also have a third, which should not be confused as the same thing, which is sexual behavior. Sexual behavior is not the same as attraction or sex drive. Sexual behavior is your behavior. Like, do you choose to have sex? How you choose to have sex? If you choose not to have sex. And this is completely under your control. You control your sexual behavior, just like you control your behavior in any other situation. So in a sense, we're going from attraction being involuntary. Sex drive is also pretty involuntary, but it's definitely easier to influence with hormones or doing like other activities, or I've heard from what I've heard, a lot of people, you can distract yourself if it's not too strong and stuff like that, but it's still you don't necessarily wake up in the morning and or after lunch you're just like, yes, I feel like having my sex drive act up right now. Like, it's not controlled in that way. But your sexual behavior, on the other hand, is completely up to you, what you choose to do or not to do as behavior. And sexual behavior is, most of the time, it is motivated by sexual attraction or libido. You are attracted to a specific person, which motivates you to want to try to initiate sex with that person. And you might also have your sex drive going at the same time, telling you that, like, ooh, sex would be cool right now. But you could also have just two or one of these at once. You could be sexually attracted to someone, but your libido isn't really there, and you choose not to have sex, for example. And just any combination, really. But the important part here is that behavior and attraction is not the same thing. It is not a one-to-one relationship. It is not the same thing. You can display sexual behavior with or towards someone without being attracted to them. And you can also be attracted to a person without engaging in sexual behavior with them. So they are not a one-to-one. They motivate each other and often go hand in hand, but they are not the same thing. There's one thing you take from this video: attraction and behavior is not the same thing. So this logic then can be applied to all the other types of attraction. So we have romantic attraction, which might be a little harder to define, but if we try to think kind of only romantic and try to kind of make a distinction to sexual, the romantic attraction would be feeling towards a specific person that you would like to date them or have a romantic relationship with them or engage in romantically coded activities. Now, sex can be a romantically coded activity, absolutely. So they're definitely mixed, and there's a lot of overlap. But it is possible to have romantic attraction without sexual attraction, and the other way around. But a lot of the times they will be very mixed. And then you also have, well, you could call it a romance drive, really. Where you might have a wish to engage in romantic activities or to have a romantic relationship, and that could be coupled with being romantically attracted to a specific person, or you could just feel that I would love to have a romantic relationship, but there's no one specifically I'm attracted to, for example. And then, of course, we have romantic behavior, which is engaging in behavior, whatever it might be, that is romantically coded to you, if I can spell, yes. And what constitutes romantic behavior is actually very individual. Now, society has a set of behaviors that a lot of people within a specific culture, because it's also cultural, of course, that people see as this is romantically coded. But some people might not think it's romantically coded, or you might think that something else, or it can also be very circumstantial. If your friend gives you a paper crane, it's a cool gift, but if someone you're attracted to or in a romantic relationship with gives you a paper crane, that might be a romantic behavior because the context is different. Then we come to platonic attraction, and this might have a couple of different definitions, but one of the basic ones would be making the comparison to friendship. So platonic attraction might be that you feel like you really want to be friends with a specific person, or you really want them to like you. You really want to have a relationship with someone that is not romantic or sexual. You want to hang out with them. You want to be friends, essentially. And that is something that definitely can happen. I have experienced that I really want to be friends with someone because I think they're cool, but I don't want to have sex with them and I don't want to date them. So, platonic attraction. And you could also talk about platonic drive, as in maybe then you want to meet more new people, you want to or you want to make more friends, for example. Now, this is a little bit more hard to define in the platonic area, and if you feel like this isn't platonic drive for you, then that's perfectly fine. Like then it's just not a thing for you personally. But for some people, it is interesting. It can be interesting to talk about having a platonic drive where you want to make new friends, or you want to hang out with friends or stuff like that. And then also platonic behavior, and this again is very kind of subjective. Like it has to do with the specific circumstances you are in, that but you engage in sort of like friend behavior. You just want to hang out with people in a way that's not sexual or romantic, for example. Then there are more than like 4 types of attraction. Depends entirely how you as a person define them. Some of these you might not make a distinction between, and some of them you might, 1 or 2 of them you might feel like, oh yeah, but like that for me is a distinctive separate attraction. A lot of people in the romantic and asexual communities also find it helpful to make a distinction with aesthetic attraction, which would be defined as you are aesthetically drawn to someone. You might think that someone is really pretty or really beautiful or really, in a way, almost like a work of art. It's really aesthetically pleasing to look at this person. They might have an amazing hair color, amazing dress. It might be someone who's wearing a beautiful sari, and you're like, oh my god, this looks amazing. Like looking at beautiful photos on Instagram, for example. You can be aesthetically attracted to someone without necessarily wanting to have sex with them or engage in romantic behavior with them. Usually this attraction will be, for many, I think, mixed in and coupled with romantic and sexual attraction. But for some people, you might look at someone at some point and just be like, damn, they look so good. I don't necessarily want to like engage with them, but like, damn, I could look at them all day. They look so good. That would be aesthetic attraction. And then if you want, you can talk about aesthetic drive, aesthetic behavior, and all of this too. But you don't have to, of course. And then some people also talk about sensual attraction, as in touch or the other senses, as in you can be sensually attracted to someone's voice, like you really love listening to their voice, or again, without necessarily being romantically or sexually attracted to that person or their voice, or you really love someone touching you or touching someone or something and stuff like that. And for some people, sometimes that is a separate experience from romantic and sexual. But for a lot of people, it might go hand in hand with these types of attraction. And once again, if it's not relevant for you personally to make distinctions between types of attraction, that's perfectly fine. The split attraction model doesn't apply to everyone. And even for the people that it does, a lot of the times a bunch of attractions are all like mixed together, and it can be actually impossible to make the distinction. And that's just how it is. But I want to emphasize again that if you take anything from this, it's that attraction does not equal behavior. For example, a heterosexual man can engage in sexual behavior with a woman without being attracted. Oh, but he can also engage in sexual behavior with another man, and it doesn't change his orientation. He's still straight, because if he's not attracted to the other man, he's not attracted. So attraction and behavior don't necessarily go hand in hand. You can display behaviors that are not motivated by attraction, and you can be attracted without displaying behavior. And that takes us into, well, what then is orientation built on? And in the most general basic form, so sexual orientation in the most general basic form correlates to sexual attraction, not behavior, attraction, which is involuntary. You cannot control attraction. And similarly, romantic orientation lines up with romantic attraction, not behavior, attraction. It is involuntary. You cannot control it. And for most people, it is not necessarily relevant to make a distinction between sexual and romantic orientation, which is perfectly fine. So then your orientation, just in general, your general orientation is your attraction. So again, a straight man is straight because he's attracted, whether sexual or romantic or both, because he's attracted to women. He's attracted to a different gender. If he engages in sexual behavior with other men, but he's not attracted to them, cool, he's still straight. Behavior and attraction are not the same thing. Now, behavior is most often motivated by attraction, by all means. And for most people, attraction and behavior will line up because attraction is a motivation for behavior, but it is not a 100% one-to-one correlation. So just because you see someone behave in a way that you think is a specific orientation, you cannot decide someone's orientation for them, because it is the involuntary attraction that they experience that defines their orientation. And therefore, you can also not necessarily change someone's orientation, and you don't wake up one day and decide, today I want to be attracted to men because I'm over being attracted to women or to several genders. No. So then also in the aromantic and asexual communities, since You can be both or just one of them. There is an attraction that you don't experience. We also sometimes use the words to be pedi-oriented or to be vari-oriented. So being pedi-oriented means that you're, usually we talk about the sexual and romantic orientations, they line up. So if you are heterosexual and heteromantic, you would be peri-oriented. Peri-oriented. I cannot apparently get my words right. Let me just quickly fix this before I teach everyone lies. Peri-oriented. See, this sounds much better. Okay, wow, I'm trying to write with the eraser. Here we go. Peri-oriented. I'm so sorry. Peri-oriented. And if you are bisexual and biromantic, you are peri-oriented. Or if you are aromantic and asexual, you would be peri-oriented. Your sexual and romantic orientations line up. You're attracted or not attracted towards the same genders or people. Doesn't mean that you necessarily have to always be romantically attracted to someone you are sexually attracted to, because again, your attractions don't have to line up for every single person you're ever attracted to. But the general pattern of your attractions. But then you can also be vari-oriented, which is where your orientations don't necessarily line up. So for example, if someone is aromantic heterosexual, so they might be sexually attracted to, say it's a woman, so she might be sexually attracted to men, but she's not romantically attracted to them. Doesn't make her a bad person or anything. It just simply means that her orientations, her sexual romantic orientations don't line up. You could also be biromantic and homosexual, for example. And then your orientations don't line up. Doesn't make you a better or worse human. It just means that you might not necessarily be sexually attracted to everyone that you're romantically attracted to. And it can be very hard to figure out if you're peri or vari oriented. And again, for most people, it's probably going to be completely irrelevant and you don't have to think about it or care about it. But since splitting up attractions can be very important for people, for those people, it might be interesting to talk about, well, my orientations line up or don't line up. For example, if you're homo-romantic asexual, then your orientations don't line up, and it has an impact on your life and how you navigate. But again, if it's not relevant to you, you don't have to care. You don't have to apply it to yourself. That's completely subjective. Next, we also talk about, especially maybe in the sexual community, but our stance on sex. And these might be, here we have words or concepts that you have heard before and maybe in a slightly different meaning or context, but we make a distinction between, which I think everyone should do, general attitude towards sex, as in sex as a general concept, other people are doing it, has nothing to do with me personally, and then also your personal attitude towards you engaging in sexual activities or behavior. So for general attitude towards sex, we have sex positive, which is that you feel like sex as a general concept or activity is a good thing. And it might also include that everyone should be allowed to have as much or as little sex as possible, and it has benefit, like it's a good thing for humans in general to have sex. Sex neutral, where might have an overlap where it's like, well, sex as a general concept is whatever, it's a neutral thing. It's neither inherently good nor inherently bad. It's just a thing. Might have a lot of overlap with being sex positive. Sex negative is that you feel like sex as a general concept for all humans, nothing to do with your own behaviors, just as a general concept, sex is inherently a bad thing that people should not be doing, they should stay away from, etc. Then you have your personal attitude towards sex. We talk about being sex favorable, where you personally like or love sex, engaging in sexual behaviors. You might actively seek it, no matter your orientation, but also an asexual person might love sex for loads of different reasons. Doesn't being attracted is not the only reason people have sex of any orientation. You can have it because you like how it feels, because you like the intimacy, because it's something that you share with a person that is special to you. Stuff like that. Attraction is not the only reason to have sex. You can be sex indifferent, that you personally, you don't really care. Like, you're not gonna seek it out on purpose, and it's like, it's kind of a whatever thing, but you're also, if someone that you really like is like, oh, can we have sex? And you're like, oh, I mean, sex is fine. Like, it's cool. Like, it's not that you don't, like, you like it, but it's kind of like, I mean, I could be doing something else, but I mean, sex is a cool activity, sure, but it's kind of neutral, like, cool. And you can also be sex averse or repulsed, a scale, like all of them are, where you personally dislike sex. You might be actively repulsed by the thought of you personally having sex, or you just like, you actively avoid or don't want to have sex for different reasons. And you can be any combination of these. You can be sex positive, as in everyone should be able to have sex they want, and like, sex is like can be a really good thing. But me personally, I'm sex averse because I just personally don't want to have sex. You can have it like that, or you can also have the opposite, where you think sex is a bad thing for everyone, but you yourself love having it, and then you probably have a lot of guilt, I guess, and anything in between. You can also have that you think sex is great, sex positive, and be sex favorable at the same time. And this has to do with attitude and behavior, not attraction. So this is your own orientation is, irrelevant for your personal stance on sex in general, and also having sex yourself. So lastly, we have a couple more words that are important, and again, aren't just for aro-ace communities. So first is the concept of heteronormativity, which affects everyone who is not straight, and frankly everyone who's straight as well. And I'm going to read the definition for heteronormativity. It is the belief that heterosexuality is the default, preferred, or normal mode of sexual orientation. It assumes a gender binary, i.e. that there are only two distinct and opposing or opposite genders, and that sexual and marital relations are most fitting between people of these two different or opposite genders or sexes. And that is harmful to everyone who is queer or LGBT. And yes, aromantic and asexual people, if they choose to identify as such, are queer or LGBT, because the A in LGBTQIA+, the letter soup, as some people call it, stands for aromantic, asexual, and agender. If you are aromantic or asexual and don't feel like you are queer or don't fit in, that's perfectly fine, but you are not straight, ergo you are LGBT. If you identify with that and feel like that. And there are many who gatekeep, as with almost all non-straight orientations, so ignore them. Then we also have aromanticism, which is the assumption that the traditional view of romantic relationships, that is a monogamous relationship where the parties are married, live together, and have children in a nuclear household, is the highest form of satisfaction that one can achieve in life, and that all people strive for this type of relationship. Now, this is harmful for literally everyone. It contributes to the belief that if you are single, you must be sad or depressed, and you cannot possibly have a happy life. That if you're not married, especially if you're a woman, you're not married or have children, then you have no worth in life, you cannot possibly be happy. And yeah, in general, if you are not constantly striving for a romantic relationship, and it has to be monogamous, and heteronormativity, of course, overlaps with this. So you are supposed to strive for a monogamous heteronormative relationship, then your life is meaningless, empty, and sad. And that hurts everyone, no matter your orientation. Everyone is allowed, of course, to strive for a romantic relationship if that is what they want, but no one should be pressured by culture or society to think that that is the highest achievement they could possibly reach in life, and that nothing else matters as much or really at all. So that's very harmful for everyone, but sometimes it is especially prevalent in aromantic and asexual communities, where people might not be motivated in the same way to seek a romantic or sexual relationship, although they can absolutely want that, but they're pressured, just like everyone else, honestly, to get married, find someone, have children, etc. And it makes me very angry to talk about it. Moving on. Also, when we talk about attraction, a lot of people, in general, the word crush is used for, from what I understand it, a mix of romantic and sexual attraction. You don't generally talk about like, oh my god, I'm romantically attracted to Robert, say. Robert is our example. But you might say that you have a crush on Robert, or that you're simply attracted to Robert. Well, if we work with the split attraction model and distinguish between types of attraction, then it is also interesting to coin words for that. So crush, often when people talk about having a crush in the aromantic or asexual communities, they mean more or less purely romantic attraction. Here we talk about a crush that does not have much of a sexual attraction component to it, which might not be how the word is used by most people outside of these communities. But when we're here, we talk about crush as in mostly or almost purely romantic. So then if you're sexually attracted, and it's more or less only that, then we have the word smush. Because crush is kind of, you're crushing something, which is kind of funny. So people have coined words kind of on the same, to sound kind of similar, but also almost have that like you're crushing something. So smush, you might hear people talk about that or see it written. Then we also talk about having a squish, which is platonically attraction, which can basically be you really want to be friends with someone. And then for some people, it's also interesting to talk about that you are aesthetically attracted to someone, and it's basically purely that. So we call that a swish. And there are other words for more other attractions. But these are the four main ones that people usually talk about and distinguish between. And of course, again, if this is not relevant to you personally, then there is no reason for you to make the distinction. But if we are going to talk about the experiences of a lot of aromantic and asexual people, it is relevant to make the distinction. And then lastly, there are terms coined, of course, for talking about people who are not asexual or aromantic. And the most common one is to talk about alloromantics or allosexuals, people who are allosexual. There is a bit of debate on if that's really a good word or prefix to use, and where does it come from, and stuff like that. But which is a relevant debate. But if you are going into doing like research, for example, this is the prefix that you will see most often used. It is allo, and people will talk about allos and allo experiences versus aromantic or asexual experiences. So then you know what they mean by that. Some people use Z or Z as in the alphabet. So if aromantic and asexual people are the A, then, well, Z is the other end of the spectrum or of the alphabet. You might see that as well. It is not, I think, as common, but some people prefer to use that. So that is all for this video. So we got some words, concepts, and definitions. I hope I managed to explain them well enough. And then next a couple videos are going to be, I'm going to go more in depth, more detailed into the aromantic and asexual spectrums or umbrellas, because there is more than just the very basic definition of these orientations, like with most orientations, really. And then eventually, I am also going to talk about my personal experiences being aromantic and asexual. So I hope this was informative.